We can do anything, or, you know.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We have a full house today. Larry said we've added lots of members. So my name is Jeff O'Brien. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Transportation Technical Coordinating Committee for Wednesday, July the 12th. It's just after 1, and so we're going to do introductions first. Again, I'm Jeff O'Brien. I'm with Louisville Metro.
Larry Cheney with KIPTA.
Jim Urban, Oldham County.
Nancy Snow, Regional Mobility Council on Turk.
Me, Barry Armstrong, City of Mount Washington.
Justin Tackett, Floyd County.
Keith Griffey, Bullitt County.
Alicia Harper, Bullitt County.
Vince Robinson with Drummer.
Judy Hickerson, KYTC District 5.
Dirk Cohen, Louisville Metro Public Works.
Emily Liu, Louisville Metro.
Michelle King, Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District.
Aida Volpe, John.
Keenan Stratman, St. Matthews.
John Callahan, Louisville Metro.
Brad Cummings, Town of Clarksville.
Tanya Higdon, KYTC Central Office.
Curtis Hockenberry, City of Shepherdsville.
Maria Loisel, KYTC Central Office.
Shannon Rickett, University of Louisville.
Bradley Coombs, Air Pollution Control District.
Craig Garber, Air Pollution Control District.
Jeff Schaefer with HDR.
Megan Bennett, A.
J.D. Williams, Michael Baker.
Nancy Griffin, Regional Mobility Council in the City of Woodbridge.
John Loss, Greater Louisville, Inc.
Lori Pacino, City of Mount Washington.
Arthur Jones, City of Shepherdsville. Scott Fleming, City of Shepherdsville.
Corey Daly with HWC Engineering.
Paul Links with HWC Engineering. Nick Bale with KIPTA.
Mary Lou Halber with KIPTA.
David Burton with KIPTA.
Amanda Dethridge with KIPTA. Sarah Bear, KIPTA.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have minutes from June 14th, 2017. If there are no additions or corrections, I'll take a motion to approve.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. This next item is time for public comment on the agenda. So if there's any members of the public that wish to comment on anything on our agenda, please step forward to the podium. Do I have anybody? Once, twice, okay. The next item, Larry, we have a Transportation Policy Committee report.
Yes, the policy committee met on June 22nd, and at that meeting, we looked at the final stages of the downtown mobility plan. Hopefully, we'll wrap that up very soon. The committee also approved the transportation alternative program projects that this group had recommended last month. The ITS architecture also was approved, the final update of that. And a working group was established for the SHIFT project selection, project priority process. And we'll hear some results of that today here at this meeting. And we also had the final approval of the changes in the bylaws that pertain to all of the new members. Welcome again to all of those new members. That concludes the report.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Our next item is the Horizon 2035 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We have a proposed amendment.
Thank
Mary
you.
Lou?
Okay, thank you. We have had several requests for changes to projects that are in the Horizon 2035 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And those changes have prompted us to do an amendment of that document. Now, the changes were included in your meeting packet for your review. There's a list that was included like this. Projects were proposed for both Indiana and Kentucky. I'll go through a few of the projects. I'm not going to go through all of them. It will take way too long. But in Indiana, we had Blackston Mill Road Phase 2 project. We're adding that project to the plan. The Blackston Mill Road Bridge 51 is being added to the plan. I'm sorry, that's a project that's already in our transportation plan, and we are changing the open to public date from 2015 to 2023, and changing the cost on that. We're just updating project information on that. Then next we have the Charlestown Road project in New Albany, and we're adding that project to the plan as well. And another project in New Albany is the East Main Street project, and that's being added. On the second page, there's a well, there's quite a few maintenance type projects on there as well there that we're skipping over. And then somewhere in the middle there are some Indiana 60 projects that are being deleted from the transportation plan. They were intersection improvements to Indiana 60 and St. Joe Road, and one at Perry Crossing Road. Then there's a Riverside Drive project in Clarksville, a reconstruction of that roadway that's being added to the plan. Then there's the TARC Cross River connectors that are being added. And then skipping over into the Kentucky project, well, we have the Dixie BRT Access Improvement Study. It's a Louisville Metro project, and that's being added. And we have the I-71. It's to provide a collector distributor lane on southbound 71 to and from I-265. Now, we're adding that project to the plan as well. Then there are a couple of I-265 widening projects there. Those projects are currently in our plan. The termini is just shifting a little bit. The end termini of the corridor, the two projects together, remains the same. It's really just the cut point in the middle of the two projects that changes. So where the project was, the first one, where it was from to widen from 4 to 6 lanes from I-64 to I-71, it's changing to be from Taylorsville Road to I-71. And the second one there, instead of widening from US 31 Bardstown Road to I-64, that's changing to be widening from Bardstown Road to Taylorsville Road. And a little bit confusing, I guess. Skipping a couple pages, then we have the Main Street Story Avenue intersection improvement. That's a new project being added. It's a Louisville Metro project. We have the Patty Lane Sidewalk Safety Improvement Project. It's a Daytown project that's being added. A couple more TARC projects. The Riverport Circulator Access to Jobs in Southwest Louisville is being added, and also the TARC Comprehensive Operational Analysis is being added. So, like I said, I'm not going through all of them. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at some of those. In the past, when we've done an amendment, we have had to conduct a regional emissions analysis to show that that with the changes that we meet the air quality standards. This time we didn't have to do that, and it was pretty nice. We were recently designated as attainment for all pollutant standards for which designations have been made and for which transportation conformity requirements could apply. And all of those applicable standards for which we were designated non-attainment have now been revoked, and therefore there's no need to show conformity for the standards. So we did not have to do it. So that was just a little explanation of why we didn't have to go through that special analysis and the conformity reviews. So all of these project changes underwent public review from June 11th through July 10th. The information was at all the public libraries. It was on our website and in our office if anyone was interested. A public open house was held at the Highland Shelby Park Public Library on June 29th. We did not receive any comments though, but I guess we've explained it so well. But action is requested to recommend approval of these amendments, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mary Lou?
Just a comment on the last projects for TARC, COA, and strategic plan. We probably will have minor corrections in funding. As far as I was reading, I think we need to make some change.
Okay.
That wouldn't require any additional approvals, just to reflect the split of the budget.
Okay, we'll work with you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mary Lou's going to stay up here and she's going to tell us about the fiscal year 2018, fiscal year 2021 transportation improvement program.
Yes. So, not very technical. Okay, so we have developed a new transportation improvement program document for fiscal year 2018 to fiscal year 2021. I know you were all sitting on the edge of your seats just waiting to see this, but it is pretty exciting. There was a memo that was in your packet that included a link to the document so that you could review it in advance. The, let's see. Okay, so the Transportation Improvement Program is a 4-year program of how federal transportation funds will be spent in our urban area. We're required to update the TIP every 4 years. We'd like to update it every 2 years. And the program is for the metropolitan planning area, which includes Clark and Floyd County in Indiana and a little tiny piece of Harrison County there in Indiana, and then Bullitt, Jefferson, and Oldham counties, and a tiny piece, 4 square miles of Shelby County, which is shown there in the map. And the development of the document included consultation with NDOT as well as KYTC, and using the KIPTA project, we used the KIPTA project management process for the first time to identify the projects using the MPO dedicated funds. Those are the funds that are sub-allocated to our area that we have, that the TTCC has control over. The completion, we also did ask for all of the dreaded PIPs to be submitted to us. We all love those, but everyone did a great job of getting those in. And then it also included the staff performing some analyses, including looking at the CMP and the financial analysis that has to be completed for that. And the TIP is a subset of the Horizon 2035 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And what that means is that all of the projects that are in the TIP are in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan in some fashion, be it as an individual project or as a group project. And the TIP document is fiscally constrained. We can only show projects in the TIP that we have money to fund for. There are many projects, there are many projects in the TIP document, lots, probably several hundred, but I just thought I'd mention a few of them, not going through all of them. Some of here in the Indiana projects here, some of them I already mentioned in the plan amendment. But the Blackstone Mill Road Phase 2 project, we're adding 2020 construction using our STP urban funds. The Charlestown Road project, we are adding 2020 PE using the STP urban funding. And the East Main Street project in New Albany, we are adding 2019 PE using the STP urban funding. Riverside Drive is also going to use the STP urban funding for PE in 2020 and right-of-way in 2021. And then the Blackstone Mill Road Bridge 51 project over Silver Creek, we're proposing 2020 PE with the STP urban funds. And then finally in Indiana, the Tarp Cross River Connectors project is going to use CMAQ funds and for operations in 2019, 2020, and 2021. In Kentucky, a few of the projects include the Riverport Circulator, Access Jobs in Southwest Louisville, for operations in 2018, 2019, and 2020 using CMAQ funds. We have the Dixie BRT Access Improvement Study that's going to be using our SLO STP funding for a 2018 study. We have the TARP Comprehensive Operations Analysis and Strategic Plan for a 2018 study using SLO funds. Excuse me, and the Main Street Story Avenue intersection rebuild using SLO funds for 2018 utilities and 2021 construction. So the TIP also had to go through public review, and it went through the same process along with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan amendments. And from that public review period was from June 11th to July 10th. The information was distributed, like the plan information, to all of the libraries in the 5-county area, and it was on our website, and we had that open house on June 29th at the public library. And again, we didn't receive any comments on the TIP either. But we been through all the steps that we had to. The tip is fiscally constrained. There were no issues identified throughout consultation and reviews. And it went through public involvement and no comments were received. So we're good to move forward, and action is requested to recommend approval of the document, and I will answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions on the tip for the process? We have a motion to recommend approval to TTC. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Okay, our next item is CR 311/US 31 corridor study.
Yes, we were approached by Clark County not too long ago to look at this corridor. It's a development corridor in southern Indiana, runs through Sellersburg. It has several different jurisdictions that we involved in the study as well. The town of Clarksville, town of Sellersburg, and Clark County all provided match to our planning funds to conduct this study. And we brought these gentlemen on board to perform that study. If they would introduce themselves, and we're going to go through a little bit of it so you can see what we've done. We're at the end of the study. We've had public meetings, we've had meetings with the local elected officials, and we're ready to wrap it up, and we wanted you to see where we were in the process.
Thanks, Larry. My name is Paul Links. I'm with HWC. I'm a senior transportation designer with the company, and this is Corey Daly. Corey's in our planning group. He's a senior project manager with the planning group, and so us, along with others, worked on this corridor, County Road 311 study. Just to give you a little bit of a background about where it's at. Do we have a map we can throw up there? We're having some problems.
Yeah, trying to get the television.
Okay.
It just takes a second for it to change.
So just to give you a little bit of background on HWC, we're an Indiana firm. We've got several offices throughout Indiana. I'm located in New Albany. In combination with HWC, we had Shrewsbury and Associates on board to do some of the traffic modeling to support some of the items that are included in the corridor study. So just to give you a little bit of idea about where we're talking about here, this of course is in Clark County. At the bottom of the map, you'll see the Floyd-Clark County line. To the south of there, this route's known as Charlestown Road. To the north, County Road 311. And so it extends up through the interchange with I-65. I-65 is an overpass. And then at the, just north of the interchange is the US 31 intersection, and it becomes US 31 from there up to County Road 403 intersection. Why was this needed? Because of congestion and delays associated along the corridor. You've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 cars south of the interchange and 20,000 north of the interchange as far as ADT traffic volume goes. So one of the primary goals that we were asked to do with this project was to identify some short-term solutions and some long-term solutions. The short-term improvements should be very cost-effective measures where you can get a lot of bang for your buck very quickly. Those that wouldn't require right-of-way, but could be done in a very timely fashion in order to get improvements now. So some ideas were, adjust signal timings, interconnectivity of traffic signals, take the pavement width we have out there now and see if we can get 3 lanes of 2 lanes of traffic with a middle left turn lane. And those were some ideas that were actually incorporated into the report. And then longer term projects are going to be those that are going to require, right-of-way, utility relocation. So maybe an example of that would be a roundabout at an intersection, which would provide capacity in the long term and provide turn lane and improvements at intersections. But again, those would be use more capital and take longer to get done. So those are more long-term improvements. The decisions that we came up with were required, were backed up with traffic data collection and analysis. One of the interesting things that I think that happened throughout this, every time we met with somebody, they continually noted how horrible things were out there, and And as we began running the traffic modeling analysis, we found out, well, yeah, it's bad, but it's not like these disastrous events that everybody's telling us about. So what we came to find out is typically what people were recalling were times where, yeah, it was peak hour, but there was construction going on, or there was a car accident, or there was a cross-country meet at the school, which I got stuck in one day. So it was usually coupled with something else was what people were remembering. So when we ran the traffic analysis, we were like, I don't know about presenting this because people are going to say, that's hogwash, I'm telling you, it's bad. So what we ended up doing to supplement our traffic analysis was we took a drone video of the 15-minute peak hour in the AM and PM just to support to see, is the data really showing us what's going on here? And fortunately enough, the drone video lined up exactly with our traffic data, and it also helped us confirm some of the decisions that we put into the report as far as signal timings and interconnectivity and things like that. So that was something that was very neat. As Larry mentioned, one of the complexities is the jurisdictional complexity to the south. Even though this is a county road, as you can see, it's encompassed by Clarksville and Sellersburg. To the north, then NDOT's involved because it's US 31. So it was a complex issue having all the different stakeholders involved. However, from the very beginning, they all recognized that they wanted something done for the corridor, and they all want to work together to bring some uniformity, but then also where it was needed, have some individuality also. And so we worked with them and through this process to do some of that. One of the things too was the physical complexity of the corridor. I'm going to let Corey talk a little bit more about that, but there was no uniformity out there right now. So through some of this, we were able, through the process, we were able to identify some measures in order to bring more uniform feel to the whole corridor in itself. Corey did a lot of the nuts and bolts when it comes to developing the report. So I'm going to turn things over to him now and let him discuss that.
I'm just going to do the mic drop because Paul covered it all right there. So, no, thank you. One of the unique things I think about this study that may be a little bit different from what you typically are exposed to is the blend of technical and planning level analysis that went into it. Because one of the things we heard out of the gate was we have some major issues that we want to address on the corridor from a traffic perspective, but everybody, all the stakeholders recognize that this corridor is also important to the future of their economic development and the way the community looks, and it's perceived by everybody, including residents and everybody from the outside. So the study actually included the technical analysis that Paul described and a lot of land use analysis and different strategies that we can employ to help make the corridor not just function better, but look a whole lot better and make it a better welcome mat, if you will, to this part of the region. So like Paul already talked about, there were a lot of complex issues that were kind of weighing into this study. The top three really that we started to consider that kind of fleshed themselves out as we did the study were the jurisdictional complexity. So we've got so many different stakeholders along the corridor, and control of the corridor is chopped up into different sections. You have the physical complexity, so you've got a lot of topography changes. You've got a lot of cross-sectional changes that go from a really kind of rural type cross-section to more constrained and urban type cross-section, plus an interchange, an interstate interchange. And then you've got a lot of character changes along the corridor from a land use perspective. You got anything from large lot, rural type residential, all the way down to outlot and higher density commercial development. So to go through the study process, we really had three key steps that we followed. And this is pretty standard for the way we do this type of project. The first is really just learning about existing conditions. We all know about that. That's the study. That's digging into past plans. That's doing the traffic analysis in the study. And then you have really listening. In this instance, that was important because so many people had relayed anecdotal stories to us about how bad this corridor was in terms of travel and traffic. We've experienced it ourselves traveling through there sometimes. So we really wanted to listen to make sure that what we were hearing was in line with what we were finding with our analysis. And then finally, circling back around multiple times to confirm that the appropriateness of the recommendations really hit home with not only the stakeholders, but what we were hearing from everybody. So those were the three key things that were driving what we were trying to do. So this is just a list of the top concerns and issues that the steering committee came up with along the corridor, and they were really focused on the roadway safety, congestion mitigation, traffic flow. You see those big traffic. But if you look at number 5, number 4, number 5, and even number 7, those are things that you don't always see in this type of study. So future development patterns and what happens adjacent to the corridor and how it impacts what the corridor looks like over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Community character, that one came out a lot, and each individual community, each individual stakeholder is interested in making sure that this corridor isn't looked at as a negative in their community, and they actually want to turn it around and make it look like a positive for their community. And they realize the development potential that exists out there along the corridor. And then obviously, this entire section of the study area that we're talking about today was identified previously as high priority for bicycle and pedestrian access. And if any of you are familiar with this section of roadway right now, you kind of stand out there and you have to have a lot of imagination to figure out how that's going to happen. So that was one of the key things that we were pushing us in this study. Public concerns really kind of lined up with the steering committee, and that's what we like to see. We like to see that correlation, but they also had a couple of things that they mentioned that we thought may not be on the table, but that when they brought them up continually, we said, hey, maybe we should take a look at them. And like 5, 6, and 7, those 3 things, trees and plantings, roundabouts, and we had been told that roundabout was a bad term in this corridor because of some previous experiences, but we found through some public comment and people that had made the comments that they weren't necessarily opposed to roundabouts. They were really wanting to do anything they could to get the traffic to flow better. And then pedestrian scale lighting, and a lot of the public comments revolved around the aesthetic type treatments that you would see. It's not what you would typically see in a raw, hard infrastructure improvement project, but more aesthetic. So the top 5 corridor priorities, these are what really led us into the rest of the study and the recommendations, were to improve the overall safety. I think obviously that's kind of a given for any roadway. Alleviate congestion and improve overall traffic flow. Again, we heard a lot about that. But the safety, as we dug into the study, really turned out to be a little bit different than what we expected, because a lot of it was rear-end crashes, and it was concentrated around the signalized intersections and the fact that it's a 2-lane cross-section most of the way along the corridor, and there's no way for traffic to get, there's not many passing blisters, there's not left turn lanes, dedicated left turn lanes, and so you were seeing a lot of crashes associated with sudden stops or stopping movements at a lot of the intersections. The third project priority was defining and controlling the adjacent development pattern and what that looks like long term. There's a couple of key TIF areas for some of these communities adjacent to the corridor that have already been defined. Those are ripe for redevelopment. Plus what happens along the rest of the corridor over time, you can see this corridor evolving and changing. And then how do you create a unified roadway character when you have 4 or 5 different stakeholders involved in decision-making process and implementing this? And then last but not least, obviously, is providing for bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit access. How do you get bicyclists along the corridor? How do you get pedestrians, sidewalks, constrained right away the entire length? What happens? How does that work? So I won't dig too deep into the technical analysis, but we did do traffic analysis, including crash analysis, and ran modeling for existing and future conditions. We did not a deep land use analysis, but we did some background land use analysis, and then we looked at future development potential, and it all kind of came together into the final study. So what I'm going to probably do here in just a second is transition to the actual study document and flip through that very quickly so you can see the final result. Because it's a good study from a technical perspective, but it's also kind of a nice looking study. But just real quickly, the improvement strategies in the study, just if you get into this in detail and start to review it, are grouped into 2 different basic groups, if you will. One is things that can happen over the entire corridor-wide strategies. And then we ended up, because of the unique character of the corridor, we developed 4 different character zones along the corridor. And both of those have recommendations for short term, which is roughly 5 years, and long term, which is 5+ years. So this is a map of those character zones that I was just describing, and because of unique situations and existing conditions and what we feel will probably continue to be unique conditions moving forward, we divided our study area up, our recommendations for our study area up into these 3 character zones. And they're largely going from County Line Road, roughly to US 60. There's a pretty distinct character change in commercial to residential, right around just south of 60, if you will. And then between 60 and the interchange. And then we looked at some strategies, we're calling them improvement strategies specifically around the interchange area, because that's a really unique interface, especially when it comes to how do you get pedestrians above or below or through the I-65 corridor. And I think we've all been seeing what that could look like. And then character zone 3 is really largely this, the older part of Sellersburg moving up to the end of our study area, County Road 403. So, Paul's already touched on most of these. A lot of the corridor-wide strategies really revolved, and I'm going to try to pull up another document real quick, really revolved around what you can do short-term to improve the overall traffic flow and safety of the corridor. And that signal interconnect, signal timing really looked like it was going to be a big deal. And then long-term, eventually transitioning to a three-lane cross-section where you have a dedicated turn lane in the middle to be able to kind of alleviate what we were seeing was predominant type of crash that was happening. I'm not going to spend a lot more time on the details of this, but I wanted to flip through and show you a couple of these exhibits real quick. So this was the overall map that we were looking at, and I know please stop me if we're short on time. So, okay, this was the overall map that we were looking at, and I can't get that shortcut to work, so let's do it the old-fashioned way. And again, you can see where it is within the context of the region. The complexities of all this, there's 3 or 4 different boundary changes, if you will, along the corridor, which really makes it a challenge, kind of a fun challenge for us. Just photos of the public meeting. Existing conditions, so these are really where we dig into some of the mapping. My apologies on that. Some of the results of the existing conditions and traffic analysis, and the map on the right-hand screen here really kind of sums up, and it's a little difficult to see on the screen here, but it shows the different traffic flows, and then there was one more where we had the, I can't find it, I apologize. How embarrassing, goodness, you think going down to the recommendations, so this is really where I wanted to focus. So you can see some of the land use analysis that we did throughout the study, and this was a combination of all the different jurisdictions' land use information that we could obtain. And then we turn that into an analysis of available developable land, so you can really start to see where long-term you can expect some growth to happen and how that can impact the corridor. Some information on the character zones here, that was the final version. But as we get down, this is actually the meat of the recommendations, where we started to look at different ways that we can improve this corridor, and I am really struggling with so this is one example, one graphic that we prepared to help illustrate what could happen on the corridor long term. So this is really kind of a 3-stage process of converting what you have as an existing 2-lane, almost rural cross-section roadway to something that is more urban, has a more well-defined character. So the top image here is basically existing conditions that we modeled in a program. It's just a graphics program. Second would be a shorter-term transition where you have available right-of-way to be able to take that 2-lane and use existing pavement width, possibly some existing shoulder width, and actually just kind of restrike the roadway to have a 2-lane, two through travel lanes and a center turn lane, dedicated turn lane. That is what we're recommending as kind of a shorter mid-term option where it's possible along the corridor, because that's really what's going to help with the congestion, we think, and also with a lot of the crashes that we see out there. So having that dedicated turn lane. And then longer term, there was a desire by the committee and by the public to turn this into more of what we would consider more of a kind of an urban cross-section, where you actually go to a curb and gutter cross-section with a raised median where you can have it, plus the dedicated turn lane. So you would keep the 3-lane cross-section, but you would slowly transition this entire corridor to look less rural and more urban, more well-defined character. The challenge with the third option is obviously you get into some of these older areas and you're going to have some right-of-way constraints. So you're going to have to look at the right-of-way process and figuring out, how you stage that and how you go through that. Right-of-way, especially up through Character Zone 3, which is through that older part of Sellersburg, is really constrained. Through the rest of the corridor, not as much, but you're going to have some pinch points that you'll have to address. Again, this really kind of shows where you would have potentially constrained pavement width, so where you would have a little more challenge doing just the striping for the 3-lane cross section, and we cover a lot of that in detail. This is basically where you have your different right-of-way widths, and we didn't do a detailed study on right-of-way. What we did was basically an aerial recon based on available property lines and some plans that we had received from different sources to be able to kind of back into this information. Obviously, when you get into the improvement, you'll have to do that in more detail. And I was going to go to an example image here. So this is getting down to more the intersection type improvements. And again, we have recommendations for all the intersections in the plan. Most of them we're recommending go to a more well-defined type intersection. You already have a lot of signalized intersections, but through signal timing, replacing signals, and then starting to incorporate some of the enhancements that we were hearing from people that they would like to see along the corridor, you can start to envision through this graphic what that corridor could become long-term. So you start to put in some of the dedicated turn lanes at the intersections that are recommended. You do have the width on one side of the road, especially south of the interstate, to add probably a shared use type path, 8-foot wide path on one side of the road. Long-term, if you do go through the right-of-way process, you can look at doing pedestrian provisions on both sides of the road, and then just improving these intersections to make the crossing safer, to add the street and site furnishings, the lighting, the trees and things that people really want to see to help make the corridor a more attractive corridor. And we do think that even doing that will help with some of the traffic. I think there's a psychological factor there where you just, even if you're stuck in traffic, if it's a little nicer to look at, you may not complain quite as much. Nicer roadway, and then just example images. And we do the same type of analysis and the same type of graphics all the way through for all the character zones and the overall corridor. I don't want to labor this too much more. You can see kind of the same theme running throughout the document with the different graphics to try to illustrate the short-term, long-term type approaches. And I did want to cover very quickly the implementation section. To wrap all of it up, so what we did in the plan was we didn't spend a ton of space detailing each and every individual improvement that we're recommending for the corridor, but we do have everything at the end in this implementation section listed out. And what we did was we cross-referenced pages to the concept or the principle that where it's discussed in the document. So for example, that first one, you go to pages 31, 33, 36 to find it. We also, where possible, we did some cost estimating for the projects. Again, there's a disclaimer. This is all planning level estimating, obviously. When you get into the details of the projects, those could change, but we tried to give a realistic range of what you could expect for the project cost in 2017 dollars. And then we also added some commentary or notes on assumptions that we used in the cost estimating. So all of that information is in this final, we're calling it the implementation section, but it's really the summary of all the projects. So, and with that, I'm going to cut it off and open it up to any questions or anything like that you might have.
Any questions?
Great, thanks.
Paul?
We'll be asking this committee to recommend that the TTC accept this report as final, since we did pay for half of it. It's basically your plan.
Okay, we need a motion to recommend acceptance of TPC. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Somebody from the north side.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next item is the shift project selection.
I'm not sure whether you have these with you or not, we'll pass them around. These are the list of projects that we were given from the transportation cabinet, from which we were to choose 25%. So, if you remember a couple of months ago, we had a list of around 100 projects that the MPO and the district office had the opportunity to put together. Those projects were then sent to the transportation cabinet, and they evaluated them. They put a score to every one of those projects. During that same time period, we did the same thing with our project evaluation process that we've approved over the last few months. This group, when we established the working group, TTCC and TTC both agreed that we would, first of all, use our project evaluation process and base it on the fact that if it was not in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, currently, we would not score it. So the end result of this is those 100 or so projects were sent to the Transportation Cabinet. From the top of that list, from the highest scoring projects, the ones that are in the National Highway System, they took a certain number of projects. In this case, they took 20 or so projects for the consideration for that funding. So that's off the top of the list. What that left is 79 projects for us to evaluate at a regional level. We are given the opportunity to choose 25% of those 79 projects, so roughly 20 projects, and give those what the Transportation Cabinet is calling a boost. So, say for instance, if the project scored 50 points, if the MPO endorses that particular project, it gets 15 more points. So it would be 65. The Transportation Cabinet also gets the opportunity to add their boost to the project. So if that same project is, we're in agreement on it, we add 15, the cabinet adds 15, the project gets 80 points. When looking at the ones that are the high-ranking projects for the Transportation Cabinet, anything above 70 or so is a really good score. So as we went through this, first of all, our first charge was to look at all the projects as reflected in our own process. So we scored them all. We put a high, medium, or low ranking on that list of projects. We took that list with that ranking and we compared it to the Transportation Cabinet's list. So if you'll see on the bigger sheet, 1104 sheet, those are the 20 projects that the working group determined should be recommended to the Transportation Cabinet. And you'll see that both the Transportation Cabinet quantitative score and KIPTA's rankings are represented on that sheet. All of our high-ranking projects are on there. That was our first effort, just to make sure that all of those were on there. Our next effort was to start looking at our medium-ranked projects versus the higher scoring projects that the Transportation Cabinet had. You might see in those that are ranked high by KIPTA, some of those quantitative KYTC scores are pretty low. But we felt like our process was established to present your priorities as we select the projects. So we maintained that by including those projects as well, even though they were low scoring. The possibility of that is we could add our 15 points to it. There's one that's about 28, I think. So we could add our points to it. We would have 43, Transportation Cabinet not adding points to it, and the project would just fail in the next step of the process. But that's okay, because we're sticking to our guns and we're saying our high priority projects are the ones that we should move forward with. That's the first thing we did. Now, the members of the working group are here. I think we're only missing one, and that's Tom, but Judy is here, and Judy was also part of this. So if I'm misspeaking on any of this, please stop me. The next thing we did, we started to look at the projects that the Transportation Cabinet might decide to boost. And we looked at those, first of all, in view of our medium ranking. So that's the ones that you'll see next in line there are the ones that are either or both ranked medium by KIPTA, and the possibility of boosting those projects to get those scores up higher by the Transportation Cabinet. And as we go further down in the list, you'll see KIPTA ranking of low, but you'll see some pretty good numbers, pretty good scores on the Transportation Cabinet projects. Many of those that are low rankings, the KIPTA ranking, are already underway. And some of that was involved in the process as well. If the project is already underway, we think we should endorse it, even though our overall ranking is low, based on our criteria. But it is underway, and we're trying to fulfill our promise to the community. Fairly,
You got it.
Larry, you might want to keep in mind that our process wasn't intended to evaluate projects that are currently underway as well.
well, yes, it was. So does anyone have any questions regarding how we got, where we got?
I noticed when you mentioned them that a couple of these low are on the move or underway. 480 in the new 114 at mile marker. Yeah, so I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah, 245 too is one of them. And we hope that the Transportation Cabinet has an opportunity at the next phase of this to go to a regional meeting. The state has been divided into 4 regions. At this regional meeting, the Transportation Cabinet gets the opportunity to get some projects into the process through some formula that hasn't been established yet. But the projects of statewide priority will get a certain amount of funding. And then the money that is remaining in the budget will be applied regionally. And then once that dollar figure is established, it's going to be divided into 4 pots across the state. Each region will get the same amount of money. And then within each region, there are 3 highway districts. So each one of those 3 highway districts gets 25% of that 25%. So when the Transportation Cabinet goes to that meeting, they can say, okay, we have this amount of money, these are the projects we want to move forward with. Our hope is that some of them that are already underway will be those projects, regardless of the score. That if we have our foot on the ground here, we need to push that project forward. We don't know what's going to happen, because we have no idea in the world how much money that's going to be. There's also a 25%, there are 3 highway districts, so each one of them get 25% of that 25%. Then there's that floating 25% that they compete for. And what we'd like to see there is some of these projects with really high scores, that we can agree with the district office that both of us need to boost the project to get that score really high. So when they sit down and they try to compete for that extra 25%, we've got a project that ranks pretty high. That's basically the philosophy that we adopted as a working group to try to put this list together. The reality of it is maybe 4 or 5 of these projects might get money. We don't know. We really don't know how much money is going to be available. But what it does for us in the future, and for the Transportation Cabinet, right now, KYTC does not have a project-specific long-range plan, but this sort of creates the first few years of one. And it helps us, as we put our MPP together, to see what the projects in the mix are and how they rank, and which ones should move forward.
Larry, actions requested, we're being asked to approve this 8.5 by 14.
Yes, we recommend approval of those projects by the
Well,
TTCC.
one of those projects we discussed in the working group was 393, which is underway. Phase 1's almost done, phase 2, working on it, but it's not on this list. What did we do with that? I don't remember.
Do you have a question?
We did not include it.
Well, it has a low and low, so shouldn't it be on here as a low priority project, but still one that the cabinet needs to address in some way, shape, or form?
I can't recall what we finally said.
Yeah, I can't either, but my concern is if it's not on this list, does it just disappear, or is the cabinet
See what I'm saying?
gonna just keep?
I don't remember, what did Tom have to say about that, Judy? You remember? 393 project?
Well, I think we just, in looking at the scores, when you look at the range of those scores, and we had that conversation about if you add 15 points, it was like a 23 minute.
Well, but we got low priority projects on this list. That scored low, but it's not on this list, but it's underway. So I'm not really clear. I don't want it to just fall off everybody's chart somewhere.
Right.
I don't know how to deal with, because we call them the asterisk projects, the ones that were like, okay, I mean, they're out clearing right away even as we speak.
Right.
Well, we had, wasn't that project funded already? Partially.
Well, it's partial.
Construction's not.
Is it in this list at all?
It is
or
in
not?
this one.
Okay, where is it
It's
in
on,
this list?
yeah, it's on that one.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what?
not, but we're being asked to approve this list.
Right.
Right, my question is, where is this and what is your score? I guess.
It was 22 or 30 or something.
And that's why
Scroll
it
on
didn't
down
make
to
it,
you
is
hit
because we were looking
That's
at
on
the
the
score and the possibility of adding points to it.
And why
And we
to
would be
do that, yeah,
competitive.
you all decided not
if
to
we
do
did.
that. And I would say next week we're having our official,
It's on the last page.
It's on the very
when
last
we
one.
had this meeting, as Larry said, TTCC came to that meeting with projects that we might, there had been nothing definitive from the district. We were just trying to partner with you.
Right.
We had some preliminary meetings. And so maybe if you want to get with Matt on that and just chat with him, that might, I think the thing of the boost is you're only boosting 20%. So it's not like the project's not on any list, it's just not getting that extra 15.
Well, again, I understand
Yeah.
all of that, but it's not on the list that we're being asked to approve today and send to TPC.
Correct.
And yet it's underway, and we have low priority projects on this list. It is a low priority, but it's not even appearing on this
On the
list.
boost list, that's your boost, that's your
Yes,
extra
even though we're
15,
not
but it
really
is on a
boosting.
list.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Even though we're not actually boosting it.
Right, and I would say next week KYTC will have our boost
Okay.
meeting, and if you want to talk to Matt about that to help get some support, that would be my best direction.
But what is the score of the project?
Is it 20, did you find it?
Yeah,
22,
I mean,
yeah. So if you give
22,
it,
and that's why it dropped off, because it would be,
right.
even if we added points to it, even though it's underway, because the ones that are on here that are low rank higher than that one. In another way, and that's why it dropped off.
So this
We had
realized
it
the
set
point.
at 20.
yeah, because of the boost.
I got a question about what we're actually voting on here. Which projects of the high, medium, and low are gonna get the extra 15 points?
All 20 projects on this
All of
list.
it.
On this,
All
on
the
the,
Every project will
You
get
get
15
15 or
points.
you get none.
Every page on this.
And that's 20 that you get to pick. Out of your big list, you get to pick
We
20.
can only add 15 points to a project. We can't-
Okay,
we can't-
why would we add 15 points to what ranks low to the community?
What ranks low to, as far as our priority is concerned, the high numbers from the transportation cabinet's perspective, even though they rank low, doesn't mean they're a bad project. They rank low with our new priority process. So in many cases, and we're gonna see this as we move forward, putting together the MPP, we're going to see that some of the project descriptions made these projects suffer as well, or the things that were included with the projects they don't measure up as well with our new priority projects.
Larry, just, this is similar to what Jim was talking about, but you all hear me talk about our East Market project.
Right.
It scored 23 points. It's not on the boost list. It's another one that
Yes.
in the shift process and in KIP's evaluation process, it's getting a low score. But one thing that does worry me is it got 23 points. The second one on our list that's listed as a high is Kentucky 155. It scored 24.8. When we were at the working group, we said, well, there's no reason to boost East Market because even if we boost it and the cabinet boosts it, it's still not going to be a competitive score. But yet I see 155 on here. If we boost and the cabinet boosted, I don't know that that's consistent with what I left the working group a little early, but when I left, the reason I thought we chose not to boost East Market was because boosting it strategically did nothing for us, but yet I see 155 on here with a 24.8. If it's boosted by us in the district, same thing, it's not competitive, so.
That's true, but what I said earlier though, I mean, the first thing we did, these are our high priority projects.
But let me finish quickly. East Market is underway though, shovel ready. 155 hasn't started. Doesn't it make more sense, and I thought it did, that projects that are underway should be boosted before even something that's high? Like I said, I left the working group thinking that the reason we weren't doing that is because strategically it wasn't going to help. I'm surprised to see another one with 24.8 on here that we're applying points to.
Well, our first approach was to look at, and I think the working group agreed, that all of the projects that rank high from the KIP's ranking were going to be on the list regardless of the score.
I remember it being high projects, the ones we thought the cabinet was going to boost, and the projects that are underway. I thought all of those things were factors that we would consider.
They are.
But it doesn't. It sounds like high was the overwhelming thing.
That was the first priority. All of the projects that ranked high in our process that were on the list are on this list.
But we're being put in a position as project sponsor now to be able to explain why didn't KIP boost this project. And the argument that I was going to use was because strategically, if we added the points, the working group said it doesn't matter.
Right.
But now we're saying that that's not the case. I mean, I can't use that argument. So now what do I tell the secretary when they say, well, why didn't KIP boost this project?
Well, and John, we don't have that answer. These two projects, we call it asterisk project for nothing better, is like they're underway. How do we assure that they continue moving forward, regardless if they're on the list or not? Because even if they were on this list with a low priority, low score, what's the chances of them continuing funding? So my point in bringing this up is simply, we can't lose sight of these projects that are actually underway and yet have these low scores and lose funding. They gotta be completed. I mean, we're spending the money right now for construction. So, I mean, I guess if Matt were sitting here and he could tell us, oh, pat me on the head and, it's gonna be okay, Jim, then I'd feel okay. But I feel the same way. It's how do we not lose these things from the list?
I mean, I'm not here in a voting role today, but I would, maybe we ought to drop the last two off and put those two that are underway on the list.
Well, I agree that might be a strategy, but we have this process, and the last time we went through a ranking process, we kind of bumped out some projects and said, look, we just went through the process and sorry about that. I don't want to start saying, well, now because it's one of my projects, I want to change that and be different. I want to stick with what the working group said. The real key is, how on earth do we get a year down the road and make sure there's still funding? That's really my point. If Matt Bullock were sitting here, or somebody from Frankfurt were sitting here saying, don't worry, we got that, whether it's your project or the 393 project, I'd say okay, but it worries me that it's not on the list.
I mean, I think, John, what you're saying, is that, how are we supposed to go explain to the cabinet and secretary that project's important to the region when we don't put it on our boost list? And the optics of that, and the arguments that we're gonna have to make. You know, I get that we all agreed on a process, and that's great, and I'm a bureaucrat too, so believer in process I am. But at the same point in time, we're trying to force a bunch of round pegs in a square hole, because we have a bunch of existing projects. We have a scoring matrix, which I think on a going forward basis is going to do us worlds of good, and we'll end up being better for the region as a whole. But I think that in this case, we're caught in a catch-22 as project sponsors, Oldham County Metro, everybody sitting around this table, that we're having to answer to this process that has been brought down on high from us, and we've tried to come up with a solution for how can we rank our own projects in this. So, I mean, I think that we have a real conundrum here.
Yeah, we do.
And I mean, we have a real practical conundrum, because you're sitting spending money on a project. We have a project that we're sitting and spending money on. And I mean, I don't know how as a group we can put this forward in a way that is fair to everybody.
Is there a process, and to Jim's point, if you've already started something, I guess, I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but if you've already started a project and you're down the road, you don't want to have it half, that looks bad for everybody if you've got a halfway done project. So is there a process that can, and I'm
Well,
not.
this is it. We're in a flux right here. Our process, the shift process, all of this is new to all of us.
Right.
And we're trying to make them work together.
And I'm sure it's a work in progress.
It is, and the working group was just established.
Yeah, no, I think this looks
Make some sense
good,
of it.
but I think if I had a project that was halfway done, and if there's a thought in the back of my mind that a year from now, it's all gonna get cut off and you've got a halfway done project, I don't know how you explain that to anybody. I mean, I'm talking about constituents and, I mean, I think that.
Well, yeah, and does it really pollute the process if the TTCC at this point recommends adding these two projects into this list? In such a way.
Pollute the process?
Yeah, I mean, in such a way that it.
We're in transition, so no, it doesn't, it might muddy it a little bit, but no, I mean, this group here can make that decision. The working group was to provide you with information and a direction.
And I wasn't sitting in the working group, and how many of these asterisk projects did we have that are not on the list? Is it just these?
Well, I think it's just two, right, John? I mean, you got one and I got one, and we didn't hear any other LPA saying, oh, there's another one.
Well, and I think the other ones are on here.
The other ones are on there, right. There's some that are, these are the only two that didn't make the list because they were rated as low and then ranked in such a way that when you cut off at 20, well, I'm not sure I know exactly how to make the motion.
We have to sift through this some way and choose two to remove.
Yeah. Well, is it the two lowest ranking? Is it the two low, where the rank is low, just knock off the two bottom low ones?
Well, I don't think so, because the lowest project, the 245 project, is they're buying right away and get ready to move utilities.
Right, yeah.
So that's pretty
That's
far
another
along.
one that's in process.
That's in process.
It's a serious problem.
Yes. What's wrong with it?
The 65 Brook Street ramp, for instance, is in design. There's no right-of-way utilities proposed on that. Cedar Grove Road, where are you with that one, Judy? Are you buying right-of-way on that?
I think we are, yeah.
That one's in process.
It's been around for
Yeah,
a
that's in
while.
process, yeah.
What about going back to what John? I mean, what about looking at the other way, looking at the two that the cabinet ranked lowest, which would be the 155 and the widening of outer loop. I don't know where we are on outer loop.
It's planning shed.
Another option, this was just help one, but the I-65 Brook Street ramp, is currently programmed with SLO funds. If it doesn't get a boost, we still have SLO funds to continue the project. It doesn't stop that. That only helps one, but I mean, that would be another way of looking at this. But we've always talked about, wouldn't it be great if we had some other funding source to give us some flexibility on that SLO funding source? So it's not a perfect solution.
I mean, that is an approach to this that you could use. The lowest scoring projects that have not started. And make room that way.
Well, the Kentucky 155 one scored relatively low, and it's hard for me to believe that one would advance anytime soon. So, and boosting it's not going to make it competitive. So maybe it's one, and then the I-65 Brook ramp. That's two that we could remove and then place Oldham County and ours, the East Market on there.
Which one's the second one you're referring to? Is it on the first sheet? Or the second?
It's on the very last, it's the second to the last one.
Okay.
Actually,
I
we need to
65,
look at
okay.
that wouldn't
I
rank,
need 224. Okay.
because it is gonna have like competitive. I mean,
That
definitely
was
has
the number,
professional improvements in it.
I gave them all numbers, so. Second one down from the top.
And the next lowest scoring when you do the Hurst from Bardstown to Taylor.
I mean, we know that KYTC, we are going to look at our qualitative score. I mean, we just all know that is going to be a factor at play here, a pretty significant factor. The other thing you have to think about is, I know we're talking internal and what we're doing, comparing projects internal to the districts, to the MPO, but we're also going to be competing against your other districts and the other MPOs. And I can tell you right now, I've attended other meetings, and they are working together to boost these projects so they can compete against the other ones. Because you're talking 25% for you, but then there's 25% at play, and that can make all the difference in the world of funding big projects. I won't call big as quantitative word, but you know what I'm saying? It's going to help you if you can say, we're coming as a united front, this is what we want, and this is why. We all agree that this is important. It's a much better sell than, well, we've got this, we've got that, and we have all these issues. So in the end, when they do that summit you're referring to, that's where they're going to have to sell their projects. That's what it's going to be about.
But that's only to compete for that additional 25%.
It is, but you still look good at picking projects that everybody agrees upon now.
That's right.
And even the grandfather projects, still, some of those still seem to do fairly well on the whole score from shift. So, I mean, you have to also realize the shift approach is highway based. It's looking at data from the highway system, and that's where they're coming up with this information. Whereas the MPOs, as part of that process too, we're looking at the multimodal approach, which some of those project types don't fare as well in the shift analysis as some of the other project types do. So that's where you're seeing a lot of the difference here in how the scores are falling out.
I'm gonna make a suggestion that we remove the second and third ranked project on this sheet because of their low quantitative score. You got a 24.8 and a 29.8. That's skipped ID 469, 436. To make room for the other two projects.
Okay, you made a motion.
I make a motion that we remove those two projects so that we can add the two that are being discussed.
And just to clarify, you were bringing in 393 and the East Market Street projects in lieu of the project ID, KIPTA project ID 469 and KIPTA project ID 436. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
One of them's Taylorsville Road, correct, and the other is Outer Loop, both.
That's a motion, or we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we want to have any discussion about the motion?
So we're taking, anybody here on that? Anybody here on them too?
Okay, Jeff, I did this last time. Procedurally, all we're voting on at this point is whether or not we're gonna change this. Then we're gonna separately vote to pass it to the TTC, so that somebody could they can vote whatever way they want, it's not a combined vote.
Yes.
Do we agree that
I
these
agree.
changes
Yes,
should be made?
that's what they're
That was
saying.
your vote, that was your motion, right? That we're just changing this list.
We're just changing the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
So motion and a second to just change the list. We're not going to TPC yet. Any further discussion?
So we're gonna take 2 high-ranking projects off for 2 low-ranking projects in the process that we approved?
The 2 lower-ranking projects that are already underway.
You have to realize the high ranking is for MPO. It's low ranking for KYTC, which is the analysis is being done.
I understand, but if their scores are low, and we give them additional points, what's it gonna do?
Nothing.
It's not gonna do anything.
Other than assure us that they're on a list that advances to Frankfurt so they don't get lost.
The additional 15-point boost is still not gonna make it a viable project in the.
It's not a viable project, but that 25% that the district has to work with, if we say, yes, those are very important projects to keep moving forward, they may choose to use those because they're underway. We don't know.
Well, there's no guarantee, but I guarantee you the score will factor in. So the stronger you all combine together and promote a project, the more likely that project is to move forward.
Shift process is going to remove 90% of projects out of the 6-year plan if it succeeds. So I think 15 points isn't really gonna help very much there.
There is going to be some grandfathering in of things, but that's when you start to get into the minutia of it all. But the primary focus is if you want a project and you agree upon it, you put the points toward it, you're backing it up. Then you start to get into the details of, well, we want to do this, a little bit of that, and then you start to get into play with all the other groups, and they're all going to say the same thing. So the more confident you are, the better shot you have. That's basically how it's being put forward.
I mean, irrespective of the points, it shows that we support the continuation of the projects underway.
And there's only so much money, so this is where it's all, the rubber meets the road here with this money situation we're dealing with.
Okay, so we're going to do a vote here on a motion to amend the list to remove project, get the ID project 469 and keep the project 436. We're going to bring in the 393 project in Oldham County and the East Market Streetscape in Louisville. Okay, we ready for a vote? Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So now we need a motion to recommend approval of the amended list to TPC.
I make a motion to forward the amended list to TPC.
Motion, second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move the amended list to TPC. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, last order of business, any other business now?
No, sir.
Okay. You got one right here.
I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. One is that KYTC has announced a call for CMAQ applications. These are Kentucky CMAQ applications, and they are due to KYTC and to us at the same time on August 15th. And if these are CMAQ applications, and as you know, an analysis is required with those to show an air quality benefit. And if you need KIPTA's assistance with that, we have to be contacted immediately because we've got a lot of things in the fires, and we want to have enough time to make sure that there's any data that needs to be collected or anything like that. Also, the other thing that I wanted to say, also having to do with CMAQ, is that probably you maybe have heard of this already, but there were KYTC chose 3 projects from our area for CMAQ funding for the last round. Those included the Riverport Circulator, the Kentucky 53 improvements at Crystal Drive and at I-71 off-ramp, and the Northeast Louisville Loop Eastwood Trail, the section, on Shelbyville Road from Wooded Falls Road to North English Station Road. Those were the 3 that did get funded. They were our number 1 project, our number 5 project, and our number 6 project. So just letting you know that some of our projects did get funded this last time.
do we know how much funding is available for this application side?
I think she might have said 14 million, but I can't swear to that right this minute. And even the number that she mentioned, she threw out, she said she can't promise that either. But I think it was about 14 million.
Any other? I do have one announcement. As you may or may not know, we have a local chapter of the Urban Land Institute, ULI Kentucky. We have a Mayor's Land Use and Development Forum that is planned for August 3rd and 4th. And it's going to be focused on downtown and some of the developments happening around and near downtown. We'll also be focusing on development around Floyd's Fork and the parklands of Floyd's Fork. So this is my shameless pitch. If you'd like to join us with that, that would be, I think you'll have a great opportunity to hear from developers and projects around the community and as far as land use goes. So please, you can go and register at uli.org, and it's again Mayor's Land Use and Development Forum. You can look at the ULI Kentucky page for that as well. But it's going to be really interesting. There'll also be tours of some of the big downtown projects, including the Omni. So it's probably going to be filling up fast. So if anybody's interested in that, please look forward to it. You can also contact me for any additional information. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Everybody in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all. We're adjourned.